back-to-back days in Utica. I don't want people to get sick of me. I feel like just a little bit of me is enough. Too much might be over the top, so hopefully this goes okay.
Andrew is being a very, very dedicated Trump supporter, has been sick of you for a long time. So, and I keep saying, Andrew, he's just reporting the story. Today, if what you're reporting, though, is not what people want to hear, it can get ugly. All right. So, Ryan, before I play audio, I have some audio. Your take on the president's walk back yesterday.
Well, what happened yesterday, Bill, was essentially, I think the president found himself in a position where I don't want to call it a mass exodus, but he was going to lose a lot of top members of his administration who were very uncomfortable with the position that he took in Helsinki. Primarily among them is the Director of National Intelligence, Dan Coates. And he had a meeting yesterday in the Situation Room with a lot of these guys and people that seem to have the president's ear more than others, like the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, and the Vice President, Mike Pence. And they basically said to him, you've got to clean this up. You've got to find a way to clean this up or else there's going to be a lot of trouble. And so he listened.
Oh, did I lose you? Yep, I got you back.
You got me? Yeah, he listened to them. He tried to do it, but, as is the plan with President Trump, he had everything typed out, and, he had a specific script that he was supposed to stick to, and as it normally goes, he didn't really stick to that script completely. So the question is, he certainly didn't make things 100% better. I think the thing that's going to play out today is, did he make things a little bit better? Did he stave off the exodus from his administration, or could the problem just continue to grow? It
is a problem when it goes into the ad-lib mode, because that's when the falsities start coming out. So, for instance, he added, and you could see where he had written on the typed speech that no collusion. He wrote that in big black letters with a Sharpie. But then he also he added in the word. It could be a lot of other people. I agree with with the CIA and the FBI, our intelligence, saying it's Russia meddling in our elections, but it could also be a lot of other people. So that ad lib didn't go unnoticed.
Yeah, and a lot of people are drawing comparisons to the situation with that event in Charlottesville, where the white supremacists kind of took over and turned it into a violent situation there. And there was round condemnation, and the president, made the statement about both sides, and then when had another opportunity to clean that up, still blamed it on both sides. And that's kind of what he's doing here. He still wants to lay this kind of layer of doubt among his supporters that perhaps it wasn't just Russia. He wants to continue for people to think that maybe there's this 600-pound guy in his mother's basement, like he's talked about numerous times.
Why the defense of why can't it just be Russia?
Well, Bill, I think that the fact that he wrote no collusion on the piece of paper gives us a window into the president's thinking on this, because on its face, the Mueller investigation really doesn't have anything to do with this conversation, right? It is possible, and I want Andrew to be listening right now, and I want Trump supporters to be listening to what I have to say here, because I think it is very possible that the Russians actively attempted to meddle in our election with the goal of Donald Trump winning that election, but the president and his campaign may not have had anything to do with that.
Right.
That's 100% a possibility. But when the president is the one that continues to conflate the two and suggest that if somehow we can definitively say that Russia was involved, then that automatically means his campaign is guilty, well, isn't that the problem? And the fact that he continues to connect these two things together is what I think why so many people are suspicious of how his campaign conducted themselves, because there's enough proof definitively across the board to say that Russia was involved here. What we're still trying to figure out is whether or not his campaign was involved. So why wouldn't you concede that? Yeah, Russia did it, but I didn't have anything to do with it. And I think that's where he seems to be losing.
And the more he talks about it, the worse it looks for him. I don't understand why he can't figure that out. That's the most baffling part of all of this.
And Ryan, in the same words but only different, Trey Gowdy said the exact same thing 2 days ago. Why is it that the team around him cannot convince him that just because Russia tried to interfere means
it doesn't delegitimize his campaign.
Exactly.
I want to play the clip of what he said. This was tough to watch because we all know it's not true.
Yeah.
Even the most dedicated Trump fan will admit we know what he said. You heard the original press conference. He didn't say wouldn't. He didn't mean to say wouldn't, but this is what he said yesterday.
In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't or why it wouldn't be Russia. So,
Ryan, what I did is I kind of wondered, would that wouldn't fit into his initial press conference with Vladimir Putin? And there were 2 times that he said wouldn't, so 2 times I placed it into his original press conference. Are you ready?
Yes, let's hear that.
You tell me if you think it fits.
Putin, he just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. So I have great confidence in my...
Now, there's number 1. I think it really fits. Here's another one.
Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. So I have great confidence in my...
Well, there you go. I now buy it. I buy it now. I'm completely convinced.
Well, I know what you're doing is funny there, Bill, but I think this provides a lot of insight into why this line of explanation really doesn't make any sense, because it wasn't just one sentence. It was the full breadth of the press conference. He spent the entire time apologizing for Putin and his regime. He bent himself into all different sorts of directions to try and explain why he didn't think Russia was involved and why it was important for the United States to have good relations with Russia. And then he ignored the mountain of evidence, even outside of the meddling situation about their annexation of Crimea, the way that they rig oil prices, all those things. He left all of that stuff out. So it can't be cleaned up by just fixing one word. And the other thing I'd point out about that, Bill, is that, the president did multiple sit-down interviews after this press conference where he had more than ample opportunity to make this clarification. And he doubled down in those interviews after the fact. And the other thing I'd point out, too, is he did the interview. He's doing a round of interviews with CBS with Jeff Glor, a Syracuse graduate, went to college with my wife, now the anchor at CBS News. And he did the initial interview with Jeff Glor before the Trump summit and made this claim about Dan Coates and the DNI, saying that he didn't necessarily believe their assessment. So on any level, this cleanup is not plausible. But I think what many in Washington are hoping is that even though nobody really buys his argument here, that at least it seems as though his head is heading in the right direction, he is starting to recognize how important it is to be honest about Russia's role in this. He's not all the way there yet, so I think it's. But I will say this, Bill. I think this staves off Republican revolt for the time being.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Does this, because you're not going to stop the Democrats, and they just continue to take this to crazy levels. But the key there is, and you're not going to win over John McCain, and there are a few others, but your base and Republicans in general, you feel this is going to at least stop the bleeding.
Yeah, so this is what happened on Tuesday, Bill. There were the usual suspects that came out immediately, the Bob Corkers, the Jeff Flakes, and the John McCains, who came out and were, roundly critical of everything the president had to say. And then there was this kind of pause on Capitol Hill where you didn't hear from many Republicans. Then the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, came out, who is very delicate in his handling of these situations. And McConnell essentially made the criticism only specifically, narrowly, about this idea that he was choosing the assessment of Putin over the intelligence community. That very narrow criticism. And then after that, there was this avalanche of statements from Republican senators basically echoing Mitch McConnell's talking point.
Okay.
So, and they zeroed in on that very specific thing, that the president, the president needs to trust his intelligence community and not Vladimir Putin. And you'll notice yesterday, that was the thing that the president attempted to clean up.
Yeah,
so I think that's just enough cover for Republicans in the Congress to say, okay, no, the president understands this, and we're going to trust the president to work through this, and then, everything will be okay. Now, is it going to work that way? We'll have to wait and see.
How is it that the Democrats have become the National League? They can be thrown many opportunities to win the ball game. They just can't seem to do it because I got to tell you, they've been given so many opportunities here, and they just continue to go overboard and blow it. I think, anyway.
Well, I still think, Bill, the jury is out on this until the fall election, right? I mean, I just think that the president is to a certain extent, there's really nothing you can do to him because the Republicans control both houses, and he's elected until 2020. And the simple fact is that politicians, they read polls and they'll react to polls, but they don't really change their behavior until they have an election to bank things on. And I think most Republicans still believe, and they might be right, that Donald Trump has the lion's share of the support in their party, and they do not want to cross him. And the only thing that's going to change that, it doesn't matter how many polls come out, it doesn't matter how many talking heads go on cable news and tell them how bad things are, it's not going to change until there's an actual election and the Republicans suffer a bloodbath. When that happens, that's when I think you might see the support start to erode. And conversely, if Republicans only lose, say they hold on to the Senate and maybe they lose the House, but only by a couple of seats, I don't think things change all that much.
No, that's a victory for President Trump.
I think it genuinely has to be a landslide victory for Democrats in the fall, which it could be. The fundraising is showing us that Democrats are outraising Republicans by 2-to-1 margins. It could become that, but I don't think until we actually hear from the voters that the behavior in Washington changes all that much.
Here, you just give me this opinion, and I'll let you go. The one thing by the president doing this sort of thing, and certainly he got into trouble with his own allies in this one, but the problem here is the more the president does, whether it's on immigration or it's on this Putin stuff or these other issues that really enrage people, the problem you have is Democrats in numbers for a general will outnumber Republicans. And the reason Donald Trump won is because they were not enthused about their candidate. Can they become enthused here? Could that happen? Could these things?
I mean, you're right that there's probably more Democratic voters, and I'm driving into a garage. If I lose you, I lose you.
Yep.
There probably are more Democratic voters in totality, but Bill, don't forget the way the Electoral College works and
you're right.
the way congressional districts are drawn. The pure plurality of voters doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. But you're right. Democratic enthusiasm has to be off the charts. It has not been in the last couple of cycles. If it's not now, I don't know if it ever will be.
Ryan Nobles, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. Who knows what we'll be talking about next week? Were you able to handle that? He's just giving the story. He's just taking his opinion.
That was very good.
Nothing wrong with it.
A few things, but no, that was good.
It doesn't mean you have to agree with him. For God's sakes, we're not all going to agree. We have to remember that.
I agree.